I never intended to become a political activist. You know, as I just said, it's not my natural, field. But here's what happened. I grew up in a time and place that was about the best manifestation of the democratic process that you could imagine. I grew up in San Francisco in the 60s and 70s, and the Haight-Ashbury in particular. And apart from the stereotypes about the Haight-Ashbury, one thing that was definitely happening in San Francisco as I was growing up is that absolutely ordinary people were organizing and making gigantic changes. And it was a fantastic feeling. You know, there was a proposition put on the ballot to get gay teachers out of the school system. And I watched the fear that that put into my own high school teachers, you know. And then I saw the gay and lesbian community, but also just ordinary American citizens, parents and PTAs standing up and saying, oh, no, you don't, you know, and they pushed back and they defeated it. And I watched that. I watched those conversations where parents were like, wait a minute, these are really good teachers. You know, I don't want my kid to lose this teacher because of their private life that's nobody's business. You know, I'm not going to stand for that. The Chinese community, you know, immigrants, many of them very poor, and many of them not long in this country. They weren't the entrenched elite, but they had organized, and they had a real voice in City Hall. And it was exciting because it meant that there were opportunities, you know, for immigrants in the city that really there weren't on the East Coast when I grew up and went to college there. So I saw how absolutely ordinary people, even poor people, could really show leadership and have a voice. And, you know, I saw the gay community organize, and the women's liberation, the women's movement organize, and, you know, the civil rights movement, that sort of tail end of it. And I just absolutely grew up knowing that America was this beautiful, shining place where if something was wrong, you could fix it. And you could talk to your neighbors, and you could talk to City Hall, and you could stage a protest, and you could, you know, that was freedom. It really was. And I really saw, wow, this is why everyone wants to live here. This is so good. So I guess having been imprinted with that, I became a political activist by default because to my shock, you know, I sort of grew up and came east and left this little bubble of peace and justice, and I found it so offensive and upsetting that there are so many barriers to people being able to do what's right or have the society that they want to have, and that people in power control so much in a way that, you know, isn't intended to be the case in America in terms of our voice and our access to the democratic process, that I guess just as a function of my discomfort with that, I feel committed to addressing it and changing it. Also, now that I'm a mom, it really, you know, lights a fire because it's bad for kids in a closed society. It's bad for women and it's bad for children. I don't even want to tell you what happens to women and children in a closed society. But as a feminist, you know, there is no better place to grow up than a strong constitutional republic. And there is no better place to be a woman than in a strong constitutional republic. So we can't afford to lose those rights for our kids.